Welcome to Man of Minutes. Yes, it is Man Alive on a Saturday night. Saturday night, Man Alive. Whatever there. That's the deal. It's Saturday night. We're hanging out together. I'm going to do a little bit of an extension from yesterday. It's crazy. The more and more I think about the way in which context sets up, as I have said several times throughout this series, as you begin to apply yourself to the Word of God and apply the Word of God to yourself, the amazing amount of context that God brings to your life to help us grow and gain an understanding. So I recommend, as you're following along in this series, and I hope that I hope that you are reading along in Proverbs and getting a taste for the book of Proverbs. I have been studying the book of Proverbs, honestly, it's going to be embarrassing to say, decades. And the embarrassing part is that sometimes I'm kind of like, wow, I have been studying this book of wisdom for decades and still have a long way to go. But thank God for the wisdom that's provided here. So we have Proverbs chapter 23 coming up today, and I'm going to share with you the video, and then we're going to come back and do some talking. Proverbs 23, actually verse 5 is going to be our verse today. So let's find out what happens in the video. This should be interesting.
Don't be suspicious. 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 Don't be suspicious.
A Man a Minute with Daniel Earl. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. Proverbs 23:5. King Solomon is one of the wealthiest men who ever lived, and his reminder today is not against wealth, but instead a refocusing of our values. Riches are only one value, and perhaps the most fickle. So concentrate on all the values to live a truly rich life. Yeah, so today we're talking about riches and wealth. You want to see that verse again? I know you do. One more time with context. Let's say it with meaning. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. Proverbs 23, verse 5. And I'm sorry, I was actually reading ahead. Verse 4. Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. And then the verse, casting a glance at riches, and they will surely fly off. And so here's the context part, right? Today in my business, I woke up this morning, I was pretty well set up, looking at a $400 day. It's not, crazy, but a good healthy day for this time of year. And at the end of the day, I walked away with negatives. And it just happens that way, right? Sometimes you think things are lined out and the day changes, and some days look like a zero or look like a negative, and they wind up blowing up on you. And fortune can be fickle. It can be so fickle. So even in the context of this, thinking about it today, truly, you do not know what a day in your life is going to bring. Some things are volatile, okay? I'm shifting gears here just a little bit, but I want to set this up. Some things are volatile, like TNT, dynamite, right? Does it have its place? Does it have its use? Sure does. Yep. But comes with a lot of instructions. And some things in the Bible are mentioned with such instruction, such care to be taken with it, that we almost think it's bad, evil, or wrong. See where I'm going now? And I think the case is with money, because it's so easy for us to think about money and think, well, the Bible has so much to say about money. It seems like there's such an imbalance, such a tension, if you will, surrounding money, that perhaps it's bad, perhaps it's wrong, perhaps it's evil. I don't believe that's the case whatsoever. Instead, what I do believe is that money is, like I said, volatile. It has leverage to it. It can leverage against you, because we can shift our focus onto money as a means of self-valuation, as opposed to a means of sustaining values. And I know that may be a little bit confusing in the way I said it there. But let's think about what really in life has ultimate value. Now, Zig Ziglar put it this way. He said, money's not everything, but it ranks right up there with oxygen. and it does. It's a pretty vital factor in life. A friend of mine says, money isn't everything, but it's got a strong lead on whatever is in second place. I like that one too. And yeah, there's an aspect to money that we have to be responsible with. And just yesterday, in yesterday's episode, we talked about giving and how God looks at that and uses that. Here's the powerful thing about money. Money is a quantifier. And what I mean by that is that we gauge it in quantity. So we can watch it go up and down. And sometimes it's a good static indicator of what's going on. So, like when we want to give, it's easy to look at those quantities and kind of measure that compared to our hearts. You see, our hearts could be running on 1 or 2%, and that would be very hard for us to gauge, whereas our financial contribution is a little bit easier to gauge and quantify. And so for that reason, I think that we can look at money, we can look at riches, and determine some things just by a strict analytic. But there are so many more values in life that can't be determined in money. Solomon's going to share some of that with us. He's going to go into Ecclesiastes. I just want to say here, obviously, Solomon being one of the wealthiest men and kings and rulers who ever lived is not saying that wealth is wrong. And I want to really balance that perception before we can even begin to think about the rest of this. What people do with money can be wrong. Loving money and pursuing money and selling ourselves out for wealth or for riches can be very, very wrong and very devastating. Selling our families out and time that belongs to them, very devastating. But money itself is a means. So let's take a look at Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Solomon is talking more here about wealth and money and the pursuit of it. In verse number 18, he says, "This is what I have observed to be good, that it is appropriate for a person to eat, to drink, and to find satisfaction in their toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given them. For this is their lot." And the previous part of that chapter talks about he's watched wealth come and go, and it does. I've seen that. I could list many examples of people I know in my personal life, friends of mine and acquaintances who have had fortunes come and had fortunes go. Some won, some lost, some due to their own ignorance, some due to unforeseen circumstances. And that's the same thing Solomon's talking about. He said, so it's much more important that a person is actually engaging and investing their life in something that has value and receiving emotional validation through that. In verse 19, he says, "Moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is a gift of God." And before we read verse 20, I just want to stop there and reflect. I will say this, in my line of profession, because I am a service provider, I have been behind the closed doors in people's home space where they feel the most sheltered and the most expressive and the most in control. And I've been in the multi-million-dollar homes of politicians and people who have influence, homes of people who have fame. And the one thing that I have seen is that humanity is humanity. And some of the people who have the greatest wealth, just such a recent example of a person who has amassed a good deal of wealth and fortune, very well off. And yet the dynamic, the interpersonal dynamic, completely disintegrated, completely gone. Not a good trade, in my opinion. In verse 20, Solomon says of Ecclesiastes 5, they seldom reflect on the days of their life because God keeps them occupied with gladness of heart. um, do you have a gladness of heart about you? Because that is something that money cannot buy. I think one of the greatest treasures is the treasure that we carry within. And so as we think about this today, as we think about what wealth truly is and what riches truly are, how wealthy do you feel? And are you going off your bank account, or are you going off of your heart and your mind and your health and your contribution to society? Because that's going to be the big thing. Hebrews chapter 11, I just want to reflect on that real quickly. They call that the Hall of Faith, or the Hall of Fame for the faithful, right? And in that, you're going to see a hard shift, because he's talking about all the Old Testament saints who have gone on before. And we see them. We see men like Abraham, incredibly wealthy. Men like Solomon, incredibly wealthy. David, wealthy. Abraham, wealthy, right? And so many of them. And then there are others, and right in the middle of chapter 11, it's talking about these people who have won these great victories, who through their faith subdued kingdoms and won great battles and put to flight the armies of the aliens. And he's going through all this other kind of stuff, and he says, and others. And boom, right there, that hard shift. And others. And then he starts talking about all those who suffered affliction and persecution, and who had nothing, and who lived their lives in poverty, trusting and relying simply on God. And the juxtaposition here is to put these two groups of people side by side and say, go back and read Hebrews chapter 11. Look for that hard transition. And I want you to understand this, because I think in Christianity we have this so wrong sometimes, where we think, oh, well, if money is just falling down from heaven, then I must be pleasing God. No, 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 no. Or if I have money, it's my responsibility to get rid of all of it and live in squalor and poverty, so that way I can live a life of faith. No, 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 no. For those who have never experienced it, and I have talked to people who have come into, like I said, incredible wealth, the amount of faith it takes to live and manage wealth and riches, but because a lot of us don't have context for that, we don't live in that world, and so we think, oh yeah, well, if you got money, it'd be easy, or you don't have to live by faith when you have riches and wealth. Yes, you very, very, very much do, and that would be an entire other episode of Man of Minutes. Let's just look at this and say that wherever God has placed us, like Solomon says in Ecclesiastes, like we're going to witness out of the book of Hebrews chapter 11, so there's Old and New Testament comparisons there. When we can live in gladness of heart, and we can accept our lot in life, and we can see God as fully sufficient, whether our bank accounts are big or whether we're running in the negative, when we live at peace and harmony with God and with others around us, that is the truly greatest measure of wealth that a person can possess. Now, we'll be talking about this and more on future episodes of Man of Minutes. I know sometimes I feel like this stuff just goes by that quickly, and I hope I'm not moving so fast it's confusing. Maybe it just, I don't know, maybe my brain's the one that's slow. Who knows? But I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Until then, remember to be good, have fun, do it in that order, and thank you so much for being one of the best parts of Man of Minutes. I couldn't do it without you. I mean, I'd just be talking to a cell phone. So thank you.